My name is Emma. I work for the same company as my husband, Tom. Right now, we're on a company trip. A quick glance at my watch shows it's 9 a.m. Our second day meeting time is at 10. But when I reach the meeting spot, there's no one around, and the bus we arrived on is already gone. My phone vibrates with a message.
Leave your ambitious husband, Tom, to me. I'll make sure you're free by getting you fired.
It was from our female CEO, Nancy. She had thoughtfully attached a photo of her and Tom from last evening. Immediately after, another message pops up from a colleague in my department.
You seriously didn't notice? They're all laughing at you on the bus right now.
I picture the scene on the bus, and my vision turns red with anger. Without a second thought, I send the messages and photos to a certain someone. Then my phone rang immediately.
Hello.
The caller was my grandfather, Henry.
Stay where you are. I'm coming to get you.
I could hear an engine running on the other end of the line. A year ago, after our former CEO, Frank, fell ill, his daughter, Nancy, was brought in from another company as an executive. A few months later, Nancy became the CEO. Then, Tom was abruptly promoted from manager to acting director. Since the start, Nancy had shown a particular fondness for Tom. Naturally, she's had a harsh attitude toward me, his wife. At first, Tom and our coworkers defended me, but over time, more and more people started to take her side. Even on this trip, everyone's busy trying to please Nancy. Tom, without saying a word, has spent both days and nights by Nancy's side, even sharing a room with her. It's only been a year since we got married, and I never expected this. As I gazed out absent-mindedly, I saw my grandfather's black luxury car approaching from a distance.
So, you want me to fire that woman, that foolish man, and all 52 of the others?
He said this with a laugh. About a week later, after taking time off since the company trip, I finally returned to the office. My grandfather, Henry, accompanied me, surveying the company building as we arrived. At the entrance, Nancy and Tom were waiting. Good morning. I greeted them as usual and tried to walk past, but Tom suddenly grabbed my arm hard. Ouch!
What the hell is going on? Our whole department is under investigation for compliance violations. You sold us out, didn't you?
Tom's angry voice echoed through the entrance. Next to him, Nancy glared at me with a furious red face. Workplace harassment in front of everyone? Or maybe this counts as abuse from Tom? Either way, I can handle it, especially in such a public place. Rumors spread fast these days, you know? Realizing he was in serious trouble, Tom let go of my arm with an exaggerated, annoyed click of his tongue. Then Nancy lunged at me. Hey!
You bitch! Did you sleep with someone to get this done? Right? Just because some man left you, you're using your connections to get revenge?
She raised her arm, about to hit me. I quickly put up my arm to guard my face, expecting a blow, but nothing happened. What? Peeking through my arms, I saw my grandfather with a furrowed brow, holding Nancy's raised arm.
Hey, old man. Let go of Nancy's arm. Show some respect.
Tom, in turn, tried to grab my grandfather. Nancy, clearly flustered, quickly spoke to Tom.
Stop it. If you cause any more trouble here.
But, Nancy, you.
Enough.
With that, she lowered her raised arm and apologized to my grandfather.
What?
What do you mean, any more trouble? So you do realize you've been causing problems. I couldn't help but smirk at Nancy's words.
So, it seems you two are pretty close.
What?
Are you two involved like that?
Well, what do you, and who are you anyway?
As Tom stammered, my grandfather spoke up in a clear, commanding voice.
You're Tom, Emma's husband, right? As her grandfather, I can't let that slide.
He looked at Tom with a cold smile.
What? Grandfather?
This might be our first proper meeting. I'm Henry Brown, Emma's grandfather. Perhaps you've heard of Brown Holdings?
Tom's eyes widened, his mouth opening and closing as he looked at me with an unsettled expression.
No way. You never told me.
Well, I didn't mention it.
For real?
What?
You're seriously the granddaughter of Henry Brown, the chairman?
Yes.
Why? I never knew.
Well, I never told you.
But why not?
Because it would make things awkward at work, and nothing good would come of it.
What?
I don't want to be used by someone like you who's obsessed with power and money. Tom's face flushed red. The onlookers were murmuring, taken aback by my grandfather's words and our exchange.
Brown Holdings? Isn't that our parent company?
Those words reached both Nancy and Tom, whose faces turned pale with beads of nervous sweat forming. Ignoring the chaos around us, my grandfather kept pressing Nancy. Clearly at a disadvantage, she nervously pleaded with him.
I won't do anything more, so could you please let go of my arm?
However, my grandfather continued to press Nancy.
We've seen enough of your empty promises. Forgive me if I'm not inclined to just accept your word.
He kept a firm grip on her lowered arm. He must have seen much of Nancy's behavior over time in his position as chairman of our parent company. It made my heart ache to think that my grandfather might have known about me.
No, really. I won't harm her or even raise a hand against her again. So please let go of my arm.
Do you honestly believe, looking back at your actions, that your words could make anyone trust you?
No.
So you're aware of your own behavior.
As Tom listened to their conversation, his face gradually showed signs of irritation. It was probably frustration from not understanding what they were talking about. Seeing this, my grandfather cast another cold look at him.
Nancy took over the company from her father and completely ran it as her personal property.
What do you mean?
What do I mean? You're one of her personal acquisitions, aren't you?
What?
She used her authority as the CEO to try to claim the man she wanted, and you fell right into her trap. I never expected my granddaughter's husband to be foolish enough to get caught up in such a scheme. Am I wrong?
Tom's face flushed red again. Even I felt a wave of embarrassment. After all, I was the one who chose to marry this man. Maybe my decision to keep my grandfather's identity a secret was because, deep down, I didn't fully trust him. And yet, I hadn't realized it until now. I regretted letting myself get swept up in the romance. Noticing me, my grandfather began to speak.
Let me be clear, Emma is not to blame.
What?
All of this is because of your betrayal. Emma did nothing wrong.
So you're just defending your granddaughter? Usually, when something happens between a married couple, it's never just one person's fault. It's only normal to assume Emma also had some responsibility.
Then go ahead, be specific.
What?
If you're so certain, then you must have decided to cheat because you believe Emma did something wrong, didn't you?
Cheat. That's...
What you did can only be called cheating, can't it?
That's an exaggeration.
Can you say that looking me in the eye?
Grandfather questioned Tom again as he kept his eyes averted.
Was your affair because of something Emma did?
At my grandfather's words, Tom grimaced, a bitter expression on his face.
What could I do? When someone promises you the position of acting director, then director, and maybe even little VP if you go along, anyone in the organization would feel they have to comply.
So, you mean that Nancy had been making moves on you since she was an executive?
Grandfather glanced at Nancy. Undeterred by his gaze, Nancy began speaking confidently, as if it were the most natural thing.
What's wrong with that? Isn't it the job of those at the top to help out struggling employees?
Struggling?
Tom was very troubled in his relationship with Emma. Emma is a highly capable employee, right? She's a woman in her 20s, already an assistant manager. For a man in his late 30s, there's bound to be some pride at play. With Emma, Tom just couldn't keep up.
Couldn't keep up?
Come on, do I have to say it? I'm talking about intimacy. Their marital intimacy.
Nancy smirked at me, deepening the furrow in my brow.
Come on, what's wrong? Are you mad? But unfortunately, it's the truth. He was pretty desperate. He even asked me, Nancy, could I give it a try with you?
That's not true.
Tom suddenly shouted, loudly denying Nancy's ongoing stream of words.
That's not true. Nancy was the one who suggested it. She said, "Isn't Emma alone a bit unfulfilling? Someone with that much pride could never satisfy you. Let's do something special together."
What?
I turned her down, obviously. She's at least 10 years older than me.
Excuse me? Older?
But when she started talking about promotions and benefits, I couldn't refuse.
I found myself oddly calm, listening to Tom's skewed reasoning. Why did you accept the promotions and benefits?
What?
You must have known that, with your skills, getting promoted to acting director or director wouldn't be difficult eventually, right? So why the rush?
Well,
In the end, you panicked because I got promoted to assistant manager, didn't you? Tom fell silent. Just as I thought. I lowered my gaze. Just before Nancy joined the company as an executive, I had received an unexpected promotion. Becoming an assistant manager in my 20s was a big deal. This became the talk of the company. Naturally, Tom was in the middle of it all. Though Tom managed with a strained smile, he dealt with it. However, I noticed that around that time, he stopped talking about work. Up until then, we'd often discussed work issues and challenges as part of our daily conversations. I'd always seen it as one of the advantages of working in the same company. But ever since rumors about my promotion started circulating, Tom stopped talking about work, only giving vague responses when I brought it up. As this continued, I stopped talking to him about work. Of course, I ended up hearing about Tom's own promotion along with the rest of my colleagues. These actions were more than enough to make me notice the change in him. Did you want to climb the ladder that badly? It was a simple question. Tom loved his work, but he never struck me as someone ambitious for promotions. He simply tackled the work he loved with enthusiasm, despite the challenges, and to be honest, he practically shone while doing it. But Tom's answer was blunt.
of course I did.
He declared.
You're nearly 10 years younger than me, in your late 20s, and already an assistant manager, a woman, no less. Back then, I was just a manager. I couldn't stand losing to you, and then, just in time, Nancy joined as an executive. She took an immediate liking to me and even admitted she couldn't stand you. She assured me that if I stayed close to her, my rise up the ranks would be guaranteed. So I agreed.
I could only sigh. So, in the end, you just didn't like me. It wasn't about me being at fault. You just couldn't stand me.
Exactly. Everyone knew you were my wife, and I couldn't bear the thought of being beaten by you. Even if I was above you for now, I knew the day would come when you'd surpass me, and I'd be the one they'd laugh at.
So, you decided to act preemptively. That's it, right?
Right.
Tom gave a small nod, and beside him, Nancy grinned. He let himself be used by someone like her. I realized, somewhat bitterly, that it hadn't been a mistake to keep my family background a secret. If I told him, he would have exploited me without hesitation. Being underestimated might have been the better outcome. As I mulled over this, my grandfather placed a gentle hand on my back. I looked over to see him fixing Tom with that same cold stare.
What a pity. You threw away your wife you once loved and sold your soul to the devil, didn't you?
Sold my soul? That's a bit much, isn't it?
It's the truth. Nancy is a devil of sorts. She's trying to destroy the company her father built just to satisfy her own greed.
What?
Don't tell me you haven't noticed that, being so close to her.
Well,
Nancy despises this company. She's taking revenge on her father who abandoned her and her mother by taking over the company and bending it to her will.
My grandfather's shocking statement echoed through the entrance hall. The place fell silent for a moment before everyone began buzzing with agitation. It was only natural. When I first heard it from my grandfather, even I had trouble believing it. Takeover? Destruction? Everyone seemed shaken by the unsettling words. The more I learned, the more everything made sense. From the moment Nancy entered the company as an executive, we had been pulled into her scheme.
what do you mean by that?
Tom asked, coming back to himself after the initial shock. With a stern expression, my grandfather began explaining.
Frank and Nancy are actually father and daughter.
Really?
However, after founding the company, Frank divorced his wife. Nancy went back to the countryside with her mother, while Frank stayed focused on building the company, never remarrying. But perhaps due to the strain, Frank began experiencing more frequent health issues. As someone who has worked here for years, you should know that, right?
Yes.
That's when Nancy appeared, saying, "If you'd consider giving it to someone else, why not pass it to me? I want to protect the company you've worked so hard to build, Dad."
What?
Though they'd been separated, Nancy was still his beloved daughter. When she expressed a desire to protect the company he'd invested so much in, it was hard for him to refuse. Just as she'd planned, Frank brought her on as an executive and started preparing for the eventual succession.
Looking back to when Nancy joined as an executive, a lot of things did seem off. Out of nowhere, this daughter of the chairman, whom no one had even heard of, arrived from another company and took on a senior role. Most employees didn't even know Frank had been divorced. It's no wonder the entire office was buzzing when she suddenly appeared as an executive. And her work performance was another topic of conversation, albeit in a different way. Though she had been working, Nancy was a complete novice in this industry, having come from an entirely different field. She had no experience in HR, sales, or finance. Naturally, other executives were frustrated that someone with an ordinary office background was suddenly made an executive. But rather than focusing on her duties, Nancy was preoccupied with favoring Tom and making life difficult for employees like me who didn't please her. She neglected most of her responsibilities as an executive, leaving them to her assistant while indulging in extravagant trips and fine dining at the company's expense. Naturally, some employees pushed back. However, those who opposed her soon disappeared, and by the time people were hailing her as the next CEO, hardly anyone dared to challenge her.
At first, Frank was genuinely delighted that his daughter, Nancy, wanted to help him. Considering his own health, he prepared a position for her as an executive with the intention of promoting her to CEO within a year. But when he opened the door, well, I think everyone here knows what happened. Apparently, some executives and department heads kept resisting until the end. However, Frank's health deteriorated too rapidly. By the time he required surgery and long-term hospitalization, he entrusted the company's future to close executives, department heads, and myself before stepping down as the CEO.
By entrusting it to me, he was referring to bringing the company under the umbrella of Brown Holdings.
So, by then, Frank was already worried about the direction things were heading.
Exactly. But when he finally came to me, he was practically on the verge of leaving his post. Even I was stunned, wondering why he hadn't confided in me sooner.
Frank probably hadn't wanted to share his concerns, even if he felt them. She was, after all, his own daughter. He'd likely hoped to shoulder everything himself. He cared that much, and yet Frank bore a heavy responsibility.
All he ever asked was to protect the company. He described Nancy's actions, but never once blamed her directly. And yet, here we are. The CEO, Nancy, has used company resources for her personal pleasure on this retreat, even coercing married employees into joining her. It's a disgrace to the company.
At these words, Nancy flushed with anger.
Now, after everything you've let me do, you're complaining? This is absurd. You're just a figurehead chairman. My dad's retired and uninvolved, so as the CEO, I can do as I please. What's so wrong about that?
Her logic was incomprehensible. To her, the company Frank had poured his life into was nothing more than a toy. I joined this company with hopes and dreams. The field aligned with what I'd studied in school, and when I saw Frank as the CEO, passionately discussing the company at a recruitment event, I knew I wanted to work here. And yet, thanks to this vile woman's petty games, not only my work but my personal life had been trampled on. The more I thought about it, the more I felt a rising heat of anger course through me. Nancy, do you believe that being CEO gives you the right to do anything you want in the company?
Oh, are you trying to lecture me as just a regular employee?
Please answer. Do you believe that you can do whatever you want as a CEO?
Of course, I'm the CEO, the head of this company, aren't I? As the person at the very top, I don't have to answer to anyone about what I do here. That's why I'm angry. Why should I, the CEO, be forced out? Who has the authority to make such a demand? The CEO is the one who makes decisions for the company, right? My dad could appoint me as an executive and then CEO without objection precisely because he was the CEO. So why should anyone have the right to tell me to leave?
Nancy rattled off her argument.
You have no real authority. You're just a figurehead CEO.
My grandfather cut her down with that statement.
What? No authority as CEO? That's ridiculous. My dad appointed me.
That's because he owned the company's stock.
What?
He owned 100% of the company's shares, and it's a privately held company. That's why he could make you CEO or dismiss you if he wanted. It wasn't because of the CEO title itself.
Nancy looked confused.
What do you mean? Doesn't the CEO have the freedom to make decisions and issue orders? I was able to have a say in Tom's personnel decisions and even fire other employees.
That's because you used your position as an executive to pressure HR and administration. The roles of CEO, executive, or senior executive are entirely different from handling employee personnel.
What?
It seemed like she was hearing this for the first time. Nancy glanced at Tom, looking genuinely lost. But Tom kept his head down, avoiding her gaze. He understood the meaning behind my grandfather's words.
Are you telling me you don't understand the structure of a corporation?
Well,
And you're the CEO? I'd bet more than half of the people in this entrance hall know how it works. And for the record, those shares are now in my possession.
what?
That's right. Brown Holdings is the parent company here. When the company joined our umbrella, all shares were transferred to us. That was the condition I set with Frank to protect the company.
In other words, when Nancy took the CEO position, the company's shares were transferred to Brown Holdings. Frank must have withheld this information from her as a safeguard. His final act was to secure the company and its employees.
Am I really being fired as CEO?
It's already decided. As the shareholder, my decision is final and can't be overturned.
Fine, whatever. I'll take my severance and leave. Good riddance.
As Nancy tried to brush it off, my grandfather made it clear.
There will be no severance.
What? No severance? I'm the CEO. How can there be no severance for a CEO?
The severance package for a CEO is decided by the shareholder. You've only been here a year and only a few months as the CEO. You've contributed nothing but compliance violations, and your misuse of company expenses and frivolous trips hurt the business. Frankly, you weren't worth the salary.
That's outrageous. That's harassment.
Harassment? Feel free to file a complaint, but aren't you the one who might get sued for harassment?
Why?
The countless ways you harassed Emma, culminating in that orchestrated bullying on company trip.
Bullying? That's such an exaggeration.
It is not an exaggeration.
At my grandfather's sharpest and loudest words of the day, Nancy involuntarily flinched.
No way.
Think about what you've done as if it were happening in a school. It's blatant bullying. And those who enabled it without intervening are just as guilty. The company will take action, and if Emma decides to sue, it would be well deserved. Keep that in mind.
Right then, Tom began apologizing.
I'm so sorry. I was completely wrong. I was thoroughly deceived by this woman and regret it deeply.
His apology was directed at both my grandfather and me. My grandfather let out a small, mocking laugh.
Your fate will soon be decided by the company committee. What you did breaches internal compliance and could be grounds for a civil lawsuit.
What?
A divorce lawsuit is a civil matter, isn't it? Too bad for work and family.
My grandfather gave him a cold smile. Afterward, he addressed the gathered vice presidents and executives in the boardroom, formally announcing Nancy's dismissal as the CEO. Remarkably, Frank, who had regained his health, also appeared, offering apologies for the situation and announcing his return as the CEO.
Frank, I'm counting on you.
Henry, thank you so much.
Watching these two, who had been friends since their college days, I felt my heart warm quietly at their bond. As for Nancy, she received no severance, was stripped of her CEO title, and had to leave the luxury apartment she had occupied since becoming an executive. She tried seeking help from Tom after our divorce, but he wanted nothing to do with the person responsible for his job loss and the end of his marriage.
I never want to see your face again.
Completely rejected, She returned to her mother's place in the countryside. But that wasn't the end. The company filed a report for her misuse of funds, and I pursued her for compensation over the affair, leading to her apparent breakdown. There's even talk of potential embezzlement charges, but she has only herself to blame. I divorced Tom shortly afterward.
I don't know what I was thinking back then.
He muttered, attempting to justify himself. But the competitiveness he showed toward me in the entrance hall couldn't be excused by empty words. Besides, as my grandfather pointed out, Tom only wanted to leverage our connection to Brown Holdings. With nothing left to say, Tom paid the settlement and left as if fleeing. After that, I felt a weight lift from me. With Frank back, it felt like my beloved company had returned, and on a personal level, I was revitalized. All 52 of those colleagues were dealt with as promised, with the worst offenders terminated for confirmed harassment. Others were reassigned to distant branches of the Brown Group or left on their own accord. The colleague who'd sent me that message also apologized before leaving New York. As a result, the number of employees has significantly decreased, so the workload for each person has increased considerably. However, this has led to a cleaner work environment, and I feel there's a stronger sense of unity among us than before. The atmosphere in the office has become so positive that it feels like things turned out for the best. Although our reputation had taken a dip externally for a while, it seems to have improved as well. Now, my grandfather occasionally stops by the company. He says he's simply doing his duty as a shareholder, but his presence seems to have a positive impact on the workplace. Many of those who witnessed the showdown in the entrance hall respect and trust him. I hope to live up to his example, remaining genuine and fair with everyone, no matter the situation.